SOS volunteer, you know that all proceeds from our exam aid sessions and any additional fundraising you do on campus goes directly to our charitable mission, including our Global Impact Fund.
So today, we want to show you the impact of your hard work on campus by looking at a case study of a specific project in Chua Cruz, Guatemala, that's going to help explain the life cycle of a project that's all made possible by you. It all starts with the revenues from your SOS chapter being sent to head office for our Global Impact Fund after each midterm and finals season. This is what funds our programs and projects with our Latin American partners. So it's also very important that we receive those transfers in a timely manner so that we prevent any delays for our international partners.
Today, we'll be looking at the construction of a computer lab in Chua Cruz, Guatemala. This project was built in conjunction with our local partner Seeds and SOS volunteers from Windsor SOS, Carleton SOS, Waterloo SOS, and McMaster SOS. And here's a project of what the computer lab and library looked before at the local school. As you can see, it's a wooden structure that's built inside an existing classroom. So this means that at any moment, 2 classes could be happening in the same classroom. It was also further complicated by the fact that the computers were not stored in a safe and secure place. But this is what the computer lab looked like after. As you can see, lots of space, vibrant colors, and we're going to show you today exactly how we made this happen. So this project was our second project and our second trip to Chua Cruz as well. The timeline for the project was a year and a half, starting in June 2017 when our local partner Seeds and the community of Chua Cruz proposed the project, and then in August 2018 when the project was built and completed. And these are the stages that every SOS program or project goes through. So there's the project application, project funding and volunteer recruitment, the outreach volunteer preparation, then there's the outreach trip, of course, and last, the impact and evaluation of the project itself.
So every project begins with the proposal process. Our local partners and communities create and submit proposals for the projects based on what they've prioritized through in-depth consultation within their communities. Once the proposal is submitted, it gets reviewed by SOS's staff and board of directors, and then evaluated based on cost, the sustainability plan, the involvement of the community, the overall impact of the project, as well as logistics for an outreach trip whenever appropriate. The total budget that we set aside is based on your chapter's fundraising goals, so it's important that we're able to meet those targets so that we can indeed fulfill our commitments to our partners. In August 2017, after reviewing the proposal, we were able to get back to our partners and with great pleasure be able to let them know that the project had been approved and that a volunteer trip had been scheduled for August 2018, 1 year later.
And then the school year started, and it was time for our SOS chapters to spring into action. So for the next 2 semesters, SOS volunteers across Canada fundraised for the capital costs of the project and found outreach trip volunteers to participate on the outreach trip to build the project. And SOS chapters had to fundraise over 8,000 Canadian dollars to make this new computer lab a reality. And at least 10 volunteers were needed to travel to Chua Cruz to make it a reality.
The chapters at Windsor, Carleton, Mac, and Waterloo were busy all year finding students that wanted an immersive cross-cultural volunteering experience. 11 volunteers confirmed their participation for the trip, and then it was time to prepare. While some volunteers were new to SOS, others had been long-time dedicated volunteers, but everyone was of course welcome. As with any SOS trip, all the details can be found through students offering support.ca as well as through your own chapter's website. So for 4 to 6 months leading up to the trip, our volunteers began preparing themselves physically and mentally for the SOS outreach trip. Of course, head office and the chapters themselves are available to support those students throughout the entire process. This includes things like booking flights through Flight Center, going to the travel doctor, submitting medical information to SOS, and completing all the essential pre-departure training to make sure that it's a really positive experience.
And then August 2018 came and it was time for the trip. So we'll show you some photos now of their experience. So the photos on your screen detail the welcome ceremony, and that's a ceremony that's organized by the local community and the local school to kind of break the ice and welcome the volunteers and introduce them to their new friends. And this was the base for the computer lab and library. So as you can see, it is a completed building. This is a building that was completed in August of 2017 with other SOS volunteers. And this project is actually a completed school kitchen. The computer lab and library is going to be built, or was going to be built, right on top of it. So our SOS volunteers started working right away, mixing cement, plastering, painting, tying rebar, whatever their foreman told them to do, they did it. And it's important to always remember that on an SOS construction trip, a foreman will be with the group for the entire duration of the time the group is building to provide guidance on exactly what tasks to complete. But you also know that to SOS, community integration and cross-cultural learning is equally as important to us as is the construction process. So the volunteers in Chua Cruz had time to spend with children at the school, had time to learn weaving, had time to visit local families and go into their homes and kitchens and cook for them. So they were really able to cover all their bases and have so many unique learning experiences on the trip. And this is what the project looked like at the inauguration ceremony. So there's the completed computer and library right on top of the previous project built by SOS. And this ceremony happened a few days before the volunteers were due to leave the community to celebrate the work that they had completed together and to kind of unveil the new project. And this is what it looks like on the inside. As you can see, it's a safe and secure place for the computers. There's lots of light, lots of space for the grades to really come together and use these additional resources.
So of course, the pictures and videos that come during an outreach trip are just one side of the impact that SOS has. These projects last for many years to come and have a great deal of impact in the local community. So let's hear directly from one student that was impacted by this project in Chua Cruz.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Blanca Azucena Méndez Isinit, soy estudiante del Instituto IMEUCH. Solo quiero darle las gracias sobre el proyecto que nos dieron, ya que antes nosotros recibíamos computación en un aula más estrecho. Gracias a los estudiantes de Canadá sobre este apoyo que nos dieron. Ahora nosotros recibimos computación más a gusto. Estamos en un lugar más cómodo, ya que antes no teníamos eso.
And in fact, this is just one of multiple testimonials that we collect for any project. We also have one from the school principal that you can check out as well. So through these testimonials, we're able to understand the qualitative impact for folks in the local communities, but we also gather statistics to understand those quantitative impacts and of course maintain long-term relationships with our NGO partners, returning to those communities year after year so we can continue to really build those personal relationships to understand what it means in the long term. So through this approach, we've funded over 225 projects supporting 20 NGO partners across 11 countries throughout Latin America. Now, of course, every project is unique in its impact, but we wanted to give you an understanding of, on average, what each project means in a quantitative sense. So for instance, in the construction of a computer lab, typically we would reach at least 25 students per year through that project. And the average lifespan of a new construction would be about 25 years, built to high quality standards so the project has a long lifespan. Now overall, that means that about 625 students would be impacted through that project. And given the number of projects we've supported overall as SOS, we've impacted about 150,000 students' lives in our local partner community. So boiling that down for what that means for you on campus, with every student you bring out to an Exam-A session, for each $20 donation you collect, that helps to support over one student's learning per year.
Now that you know the basics about the SOS Global Impact Fund, we wanted to share the top 3 things you should know about the broader issue we focus on, the global right to education.
So number 1, the right to education is actually guaranteed by international agreements. The UN's Declaration of Human Rights includes the right to education. So all countries actually have a legal obligation to ensure that all people, regardless of gender, culture, or income, have the right to education. And we all have a role to play in making that happen.
And the UN and its members have also created the 17 Sustainable Development Goals to guide inclusive global progress, with quality education being one of the 17 goals. Each goal is associated with a series of commitments, targets, and progress measures to drive their implementation. Significant progress has been made over the past few decades thanks to such efforts, as shown in the graph here indicating the decline in the number of out-of-school children worldwide.
Yet, there's still a lot of work to be done. 1/5 of all children, adolescents, and youth worldwide are still out of school. Furthermore, 1/6 of those who are actually in school aren't meeting basic standards of proficiency in mathematics or reading because they don't necessarily have access to quality education systems. With all that in mind, SOS is a member of the Global Partnership for Education and the Ontario Council for International Cooperation, so that we can always make sure that our work is designed to complement these broader global efforts.
And number 2 is that there are major inequalities in education also within Canada. The right to education is far from guaranteed. There are major disparities based on wealth, location, and cultural backgrounds for students in Canada. Of course, one of the unique opportunities of SOS is that it allows you to contribute to student issues locally and globally. Though SOS trips and projects currently focus on international cooperation, the experience is meant to inspire you to return home to see issues in your own community with new eyes and contribute to lifelong impact.
So number 3, the issues that we work on are the result of a variety of complex, interconnected issues, both historical and current. It's really important that we take the time to understand the root causes of the issues we're working on. For instance, in the countries we work, there have been political and economic systems that have been shaped by the histories of colonialism. A full explanation of all of that is beyond the scope of this video, but it's sufficient to say that though the formal structures of colonial rule have ended, many elements of them still persist in creating that inequality. Conflict has also played a major role in disrupting the development of stable educational systems. For instance, Guatemala was the victim of a recent brutal 36-year war that began when guerrilla armies funded by the American CIA overthrew a democratically elected government, elected on a platform of promoting the rights of rural peasant farmers. These are just a few examples, but as you can see, the root causes of inequality are highly complex, so we encourage you to learn throughout the year. On our SOS Twitter account, we try to share news, research, and articles about the global movement to support education so that you can stay informed.
Our partnerships with communities and organizations in Latin America are founded on SOS's commitment to knowing these root causes and creating solutions with our Latin American partners, not for them. We work together to exchange knowledge and support one another. So be curious and learn about the issues locally and abroad. And most importantly, take action.